Okay, today we're going to read from A Course in Miracles. This is chapter 10. It's called The Idols of Sickness, and this is the last section, and it's section 5, The Denial of God. The rituals of the god of sickness are strange and very demanding. Joy is never permitted, for depression is the sign of allegiance to him. Depression means that you have forsworn God. Many are afraid of blasphemy, but they do not understand what it means. They do not realize that to deny God is to deny their own identity, and in this sense, the wages of sin is death. The sense is very literal. Denial of life perceives its opposite, as all forms of denial replace what is with what is not. No one can really do this, but that you think you can and believe you have is beyond dispute. Do not forget, however, that to deny God will inevitably result in projection, and you will believe that others and not yourself have done this to you. You must receive the message you give because it is the message you want. You may believe that you judge your brothers by the messages they give you, but you have judged them by the message you give to them. Do not attribute your denial of joy to them, or you cannot see the spark in them that would bring joy to you. It is the denial of the spark that brings depression, for whenever you see your brothers without it, you are denying God. Allegiance to the denial of God is the ego's religion. The god of sickness obviously demands the denial of health because health is in direct opposition to its own survival. But consider what this means to you. Unless you are sick, you cannot keep the gods you made, for only in sickness could you possibly want them. Blasphemy, then, is self-destructive, not God-destructive. It means that you are willing not to know yourself in order to be sick. This is the offering your God demands because having made him out of your insanity, he is an insane idea. He has many forms, but although he may seem to be many different things, he has but one idea, the denial of God. Sickness and death seem to enter the mind of God's Son against his will. The, quote, attack on God, unquote, made his son think he was fatherless, and out of his depression, he made the God of depression. This was his alternative to joy because he would not accept the fact that although he was a creator, he had been created. Yet the Son is helpless without the Father, who alone is his help. I said before that of yourself you can do nothing, but you are not of yourself. If you were, what you have made would be true, and you could never escape. It is because you did not make yourself that you need be troubled over nothing. Your gods are nothing because your Father did not create them. You cannot make creators who are unlike your Creator any more than he could have created a son who was unlike him. If creation is sharing, it cannot create what is unlike itself. It can share only what it is. Depression is isolation, and so it could not have been created. Son of God, you have not sinned, but you have been much mistaken. Yet this can be corrected, and God will help you, knowing that you could not sin against him. You denied him because you loved him, knowing that if you recognized your love for him, you could not deny him. Your denial of him therefore means that you love him and that you know he loves you. Remember that what you deny you must have once known, and if you accept denial, you can accept its undoing. Your Father has not denied you. He does not retaliate, but he does call you to return. When you think he has not answered your call, you have not answered his. He calls to you from every part of the sonship because of his love for his Son. If you hear his message, he has answered you, and you will learn of him if you hear aright. The love of God is in everything he created, for his Son is everywhere. Look with peace upon your brothers, and God will come rushing into your heart in gratitude for your gift to him. Do not look to the God of sickness for healing, but only to the God of love, for healing is the acknowledgement of him. When you acknowledge him, you will know that he he has never ceased to acknowledge you, and that in his acknowledgement of you lies your being. You are not sick and you cannot die, but you can confuse yourself with things that do. Remember, though, that to do this is blasphemy, for it means that you are looking without love on God and his creation, from which he cannot be separated. Only the eternal can be loved, for love does not die. What is of God is his forever, and you are of God. Would he allow himself to suffer? And would he offer his Son anything that is not acceptable to him? If you will accept yourself as God created you, you will be incapable of suffering. Yet to do this, you must acknowledge him as your creator. This is not because you will be punished otherwise. It is merely because your acknowledgement of your Father is the acknowledgement of yourself as you are. Your Father created you wholly without sin, wholly without pain, and wholly without suffering of any kind. If you deny him, you bring sin, pain, and suffering into your own mind because of the power he gave it. Your mind is capable of creating worlds, but it can also deny what it creates because it is free. You do not realize how much you have denied yourself and how much God in his love would not have it so. Yet he would not interfere with you because he would not know his Son if he were not free. To interfere with you would be to attack himself, and God is not insane. When you deny him, you are insane. Would you have him share your insanity? God will never cease to love his Son, and his Son will never cease to love him. That was the condition of his Son's creation, fixed forever in the mind of God. To know that is sanity. To deny it is insanity. God gave himself to you in your creation, and his gifts are eternal. Would you deny yourself to him? Out of your gifts to him, the kingdom will be restored to his Son. His Son removed himself from his gift by refusing to accept what had been created for him and what he had created in the name of his Father. Heaven waits for his return, for it was created as the dwelling place of God's Son. You are not at home anywhere else or in any other condition. Do not deny yourself the joy that was created for you for the misery you have made for yourself. God has given you the means for undoing what you have made. Listen and you will learn how to remember what you are. If God knows his children are wholly sinless, it is blasphemous to perceive them as guilty. If God knows his children as wholly without pain, it is blasphemous to perceive suffering anywhere. If God knows his children to be wholly joyous, it is blasphemous to feel depressed. All of these illusions and the many other forms that blasphemy may take are refusals to accept creation as it is. If God created his Son perfect, that is how you must learn to see him, to learn of his reality. And as part of the sonship, that is how you must see yourself, to learn of yours. Do not perceive anything God did not create, or you are denying him. His is the only fatherhood, and it is yours only because he has given it to you. Your gifts to yourself are meaningless, but your gifts to your creations are like his because they're given in his name. That is why your creations are as real as his. Yet the real fatherhood must be acknowledged if the real Son is to be known. You believe that the sick things you have made are your real creations because you believe that the sick images you perceive are the sons of God. Only if you accept the fatherhood of God will you have anything, because his fatherhood gave you everything. That is why to deny him is to deny yourself. Arrogance is a denial of love because love shares and arrogance withholds. As long as both appear to you to be desirable, the concept of choice, which is not of God, will remain with you. While this is not true in eternity, it is true in time, so that while time lasts in your mind, there will be choices. Time itself is your choice. If you would remember eternity, you must look only at the eternal. If you allow yourself to become preoccupied with the temporal, you are living in time. As always, your choice is determined by what you value. Time and eternity cannot both be real because they contradict each other. If you will accept only what is timeless as real, you will begin to understand eternity and make it yours. Okay. A lot here. This is the end of the chapter. This chapter is the idols of sickness, and it's been talking about idolatry. And as always, Jesus uses biblical terms and biblical phrasing many times, like he says, the wages of sin is death, which is something from the Gospels. But almost every time Jesus inverts the meaning of what it is, right? So, as we said before, in the book of Exodus, Moses brings the 10 Commandments, and the first commandment is, I am the Lord thy God. You shall have no other gods before me, for I am a jealous God, etc., etc. Do not worship idols, right? So the first thing is there's only one God, and it's the God of Israel, and any other God is a lesser God. I mean, it seems to acknowledge that there are other spirits or gods, but God is the only true God. And do not make idols to other gods. And there were other gods that were worshipped at the time, and part of the mission of the people of Israel was to wipe out idolatry. Now, Jesus is not talking about this form of idolatry. He is using idolatry in a more metaphorical, but also very literal way, which is whenever you deny God, whenever you make anything other than the love of God real in your mind, you have committed idolatry. and he also brings in here blasphemy, right? So it's blasphemous. For example, when you there's this interesting passage here where he says, if God knows his children as wholly sinless, it is blasphemous to perceive them as guilty. If God knows his children as wholly without pain, it is blasphemous to perceive suffering anywhere. If God knows his children to be wholly joyous, it is blasphemous to feel depressed. Now, this is harsh in a way, because, it's strong language, because, Jesus is like, he's not wishy-washy here. He's saying, he's saying it like it is. People talk about level 1 and level 2 with the Course. Level 1 is totally no compromise. It's only this or that, right? You're either with God or you're against God. If you judge and you see sin and you see your brother as guilty, if you get into a depression about things, if you lose your sense of humor, if you whatever it is, you are committing blasphemy. Now, but the difference, with this form of blasphemy is you will not be punished. There's no punishment here. God does not judge. God does not punish. There is no sin. There are only mistakes. So these are different mistakes that we make. We sin, as they say, sin is missing the mark. You've missed the mark. You've missed the actual truth of things, which is that you do not need to suffer ever. God does not will that. Love is not suffering. God, who is love, God, who is perfect love, does not will suffering. That is not in any respect part of God at all. And because it's not part of God, it's not part of us either. That is our choice. If we choose that is what we are choosing. But the great thing about but what the Course is doing is Jesus is presenting another way. He's only presenting it. He's not telling you have to do it. He's not forcing it on you. A Course in Miracles is not a religion. It's not a cult. It's not, there's no pope. There's no, even Jesus here is just the calm voice of reason that he's only really saying what you know in your heart of hearts is true. But most of us maybe are not fully in touch with that, or in denial of that. And so even if we don't accept what he's saying, on some level it's getting through. And it's on some level we already know it's true. And he says that at the beginning, you whenever you deny something, let's read that. It is the denial of the spark that brings depression. No. Do not forget, however, that to deny God will never result in projection. You will believe that others, not yourself, have done this to you. Let's bring in this important point, which is that when we project outside of ourselves, what we do, the ego projects. Love extends, love shares, the ego projects. So when we see something in another that we don't like, or that, that we judge on whatever level, we've judged ourselves first. We can only see that in them if we see it in ourselves and we don't like it, and then we project it outwards, and that becomes what we experience, because we are, it's hard to believe that this might be the case, but life, spirit wants to bring us back to the joy, and we will keep having the experiences that bring up the opportunity for us to return to that joy. Most people are not aware of that they even have the choice. And Jesus makes the point that in heaven, in God's realm, there is no choice, because there's nothing to choose. You are that. You are the love. But here we do have a choice. The problem is that we're not even conscious most of the time that we do have a choice. The choice, when it comes down to it, it almost sounds too simplistic. It sounds too good to be true. But the choice is always between love and fear. The choice is always whether we're going to choose love, or, as Moses said, choose life, right? Choose life. The blessing and the curse are right before you, right? The ego, the spirit and the ego are always right there. Are we going to follow the ego, or are we going to follow that still small voice of our heart, which is the Holy Spirit, that is just affirming that all is well. There's no need for judgment. Everything is in perfect divine order, which I understand. This is very hard to accept, and easy to say when you're, when life is good, but when you experience whatever crazy shit in life, seemingly random occurrences that seem to have no meaning and seem to be bizarre and unfair and really horrendous, it's hard to believe that. It's hard to think that could be true. So I'm not gonna, again, no one can, it's an open invitation and an open question, really. Jesus is not gonna force you to believe anything, and I think any true teacher would not force anything upon anyone and not try to coerce or force or manipulate, but rather just say, this is what helped me, and I can see the difference, and maybe it would help you, because I don't see that I'm that different from you. On the surface we are, but deep down we're all dealing with the same stuff. It's the human condition. Anyway, there's a lot here, but the point is that the idolatry, in the Bible, idolatry and blasphemy and all these things were punishable by death, and God is the ultimate judge and punisher, right? And it's scary. It's basically it's the ego's conception of God. This is where the Gnostics said, that can't be the true God. That can't be the absolute God that would do that. That doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. If you know what love, if you've experienced love, and you experience the place in your mind where there's no judgment, where there's only acceptance, and you feel that that's where you want to live and where you would like to reside, then that you understand what Jesus is getting at here. So there's no punishment. There's only the things that bring you closer to what you really are, to who you really are, to what you really are, and there are the things that are going to take you away from that. Anytime that you give in to the voice of the ego, listen to the voice of the ego, and you get into the place of depression, sadness, guilt, suffering, judgment, all those things. It's blasphemy, but nothing that you will be punished for, except in the sense that you will not feel good about it until you decide that you want to feel good and you want to be at peace. Then you will find a way to let go of them, and Jesus is presenting the way. So with that said, this is a long video. We'll end there. We're going to go on to the next chapter, chapter 11, God or the Ego. And see you next time. Thank you so much.